everyone, I'm the Book Guy, and welcome to our new series of Sci-Fi April. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to be looking at science fiction series that you might like to read. We'll talk about Children of Time's Sun Eater and Foundation. But forget about that for today, we are focusing on Christopher Paolini's new Fractal-Verse. It's one massive book to sleep in a sea of stars, and one tiny prequel novel, Fractal Noise, with more to come soon. I'm excited to talk about this series because I covered the Aragon books about 8 months ago, and it feels like we're coming full circle to talk about Paolini's next series. But I've got to address the elephant in the room immediately. Yeah, Aragon was hugely popular. The inheritance cycle saw Paolini become real famous real fast, so that meant that anything he did next was going to fall under extreme scrutiny. When this book was announced, everyone immediately started sharpening their knives, ready to critique the crap out of it. And as such, this series has had some pretty extreme reactions. Initially, I put off reading it because so many people loved it to extreme levels or hated it to extreme levels, and I just didn't want to touch that.
I'll ignore that.
But now I have read it, and I think the truth is somewhere in the middle of these two extremes. These are pretty good books with a couple of flaws. But can we all agree that there's no need to completely overreact just because the guy is famous? Okay, we're good on that front? Great. Now, let's look at the story. I'm going to pitch these books to you, spoiler-free, and help you decide if you want to read them. Let's begin. Kira Navarez is a xenobiologist, an expert in alien biology, a couple hundred years in Earth's future. Now, xenobiology is a very feeble study right now, considering humans have only encountered one thing in the galaxy that was definitely alien. But Kira is hoping to become a major trailblazer in this new field, writing the first school textbooks after she hopefully discovers some great secrets of lost alien civilizations. And when she does, her name will go down in history. This is why you should be careful what you wish for. During a survey mission on an uncharted planet, Kira finds something that is definitely alien.
That's good.
Discovery turns to horror as the alien technology begins to invade her body and take over.
That's bad.
This is just the beginning. Kira's actions have awakened an ancient power from its long slumber and summoned old enemies. Soon a great galactic war has spread throughout the stars. All of humanity is threatened. Kira must begin an odyssey through alien civilizations and somehow learn to use the cursed power she has unlocked. Where Kira once brought terror and death, now she may be our greatest hope. Now, Paolini spent years working on this book, and one of the reasons for this is the extensive scientific research that went into creating this world's fictional physics. Paolini has created a unique type of fictional superluminal travel, so faster than light travel, based off the most recent scientific theories. This is just wild to me. I cannot imagine going to this much effort.
Sounds exhausting.
But to explain it simply, the concept is that faster than light travel will naturally be affected by time and gravity. If you speed up too much, you increase your gravity and therefore slow down your time. It's similar to the movie Interstellar, with the planet near the black hole. More gravity means time moves slower. What's the point of traveling to somewhere far away if you arrive 100 years after you wanted to? So to fix this, people invented the Markov engine, which forms a protective bubble around your spaceship and it negates the effects of time passage. It fixes the time problem. However, the flow-on problem of this bubble is that it's nullified by gravity. Meaning, if you want to travel to a planet, you can't travel all the way there with faster than light travel because the planet's gravity would destroy your bubble and probably blow you up as well. So you have to travel to the outskirts of the planet's gravity well, and then slowly approach at regular speed. This means that characters can cross a huge space in a very short amount of time, but then have to spend weeks or even months on final approach to the planet so that they can pass through the gravity wells without risk. Now yes, all of this is a pretty fascinating piece of scientific authenticity, but does it make the story better? Yes, absolutely. Because this fits with Brandon Sanderson's 3 laws of magic. Remember, Law 2 states that limits are better than powers. With magic, we enjoy the powers because they're fun and explosive, but when it comes to storytelling and creating real tension, a limit is more interesting. Well, this is science fiction, and the laws of magic apply just as well to advanced technology. A scientific limit is more interesting than a scientific power. In this case, the limits of time and gravity mean that, quite simply, there is a cost to space travel. It's not an easy zip and here we are. Traveling means we need to consider how to allocate resources and what needs to be sacrificed.
We need to think about time as a resource, just like oxygen and food going down there's going to cost us.
Traveling can be very, very dangerous, although it can sometimes slow the book down. We'll come back to that. Heads up, I literally cannot tell you anything about the aliens. I know, I put a lot of thought into this, and it feels so weird to just skip over a significant part of the story, but the whole point of this story is the mystery of the unknown. You're not meant to know what's coming, so I can't tell you anything about it. You see, Kira starts this story as an uncertain xenobiologist looking for signs of alien life. We have no idea what is out there. The story is about the surprises waiting for us and the unexpected. So all I can really tell you is that aliens are a big deal in this book and they're full of surprises. Eh? I mean, it's called the Fractal-Verse, and I can't even tell you what fractals are. One thing I can add is that it's pretty intense how much thought Paolini has put into his fictional aliens. I mean, between the space travel and the aliens, I get the sense that this guy overthinks a lot. But there were times when I was reading this book where I found myself wishing for a tabletop role-playing game of the fractal aliens, because there's that many, classes to choose from and a big world to explore. I could really see that becoming a thing. That's how detailed it is, but that's all I can tell you. So, Sea of Stars is a 900-page book, and it has a very curious structure. It's actually split into 6 parts, and each part takes place at a different location in space. It's almost like 6 mini novels in a row, with a couple of plot lines that carry over between them. Plus, there's always a special bridging chapter between each of these parts that show how our characters spend their downtime when they're traveling between worlds, because of the Markov engines and the planet's gravity wells. So these quiet moments during the journey are where we do some character work. Now, I won't mention what each of those 6 parts are, because that is part of the mystery that needs to be unmentioned, but I'll outline the 3 major plot lines that carry over between them to give you an idea of what this story is all about. First, there's Kira and the alien. Oh, now that sounds like a good song title. Kira and the alien, traveling through space.
The guy's got good hooks.
Anyway, Kira uncovers something alien at the start of the book and has to learn exactly what it is and what it can do. There's no one alive who can teach her, so she has to figure it out herself. Kira's journey is very much the reluctant heroine. Her dreams of becoming a famous explorer have not turned out the way she hoped. So now she's on a quest across all 6 parts of the story to discover who she is and what she can really do. The second is the Galactic War. So things go from 0 to 1,000,000 in about 2 seconds.
That escalated quickly.
And humanity gets a little carried away. Suddenly we distrust everything that's different to us, which is consistent. There's extreme fear and prejudice surrounding anything non-human. But as the Armadas of Earth rally into action, Kira and her allies must focus on a bigger problem. Third, the mystery of the ancient aliens. Something happened in the distant past to set the stage for where we found everything in the present. Maybe there's a reason for what's happening today, and a way to prevent it. Kira needs to discover the truth if she has any hope of stopping the oncoming catastrophe. I think characterization is the area that Paolini has seen the most growth through his writing career. The Aragon books start off with characters that are not bad, but are based on very common tropes. Yet by the end of the Inheritance series, all of his characters have grown into much more nuanced and realistic people. Well, Sea of Stars sees even more improvement in this area. There's a lot of pre-thought and intentionality to the characterizations here, although the book spends a lot of time on characters, which which does contribute to its length, but we'll come back to that. Our main character is Kira Navarez. She has big dreams. And those dreams are immediately crushed.
My dream is dead.
Now Kira is learning to live this unexpected life that she never really wanted, and process the grief of that loss. She closes herself off from others and shuts down. Now here's the thing, a character like Kira would frequently become a Mary Sue in other stories, because she's super smart and super powerful, and it'd be very easily to fall into the trope of writing an unfaultable woman. But Paolini's better than that. Kira may be smart and powerful, yes, but her incredible personal trials keep her relatable and flawed. For the most part. Sometimes she's a little too awesome, but she's always got that pain of lost dreams with her, and I think it's why she's so compelling. This book spends a lot of time with the crew of a spaceship, the Wallfish. It certainly reminded me of Firefly, with a small crappy ship and a varied crew from different backgrounds. You can see these character profiles on the Fractalverse wiki if you want to see more. There's Song Hwang-jung, the no-nonsense mechanic. Her people are all genetically engineered to have greater muscle mass and bigger lungs to survive on her planet. There's Sparrow, who has chronic short person syndrome, who's determined to be a big problem for everyone else. She's a fan favorite. And then there's Trig, the youngest, who has dreams eerily similar to Kira's own, of making big discoveries and becoming famous. Hopefully his dreams don't backfire quite as hard.
I got a bad feeling about this.
But there's two big characters you should pay attention to. First, the ship's captain, Salvo Falcone. So Salvo may be a good man who runs a disciplined ship and cares for his crew, but he's hiding so many things, and he's not exactly eager to talk about his past. And there's the ship's mind, Gregorovich. In this world, ships have to make impossible calculations when they travel at faster than light speed. However, computers cannot do the maths because it requires adaptability. But a human being can have their mind implanted into a ship, becoming a human-computer hybrid. And it's usually a life path chosen for people with terminal illnesses or approaching old age. But a ship mind can be eccentric, maybe a little unpredictable, and Gregorovich is more than most. He has strange behavioral quirks, idiosyncrasies, bugaboos. This guy steals every scene he's in with his chaotic energy. Now, so far I have listed all the positives about this book in a big clump, and as you can see, there are a lot of positives. But it's time to list two of the big criticisms I have for this book, although they are kind of obvious issues. This is a major detail that just needs to be talked about. The story may have complex alien world building and hyper-realistic science and cutting-edge scientific theories, but at the heart of it is a very juvenile concept. Person gets superpowers and fights space aliens. That's it. And that's the issue here. Superpowers and space aliens are totally fine. It's fun. Stories like that should exist, and there's nothing inherently wrong with them, but I don't think that's how the book is presented. This looks like a serious, somber book with a profound, thought-provoking title, but the reality is a bit more Michael Bay Transformers. This really impacted my experience of the book. I was hoping for some epic sci-fi with profound themes, yet this story starts with a very simple concept and struggles to go much deeper, even with all the cool bells and whistles. I kept hoping it would get more mature, and Paolini clearly made an effort to do this, but I don't think it could get any deeper than the concept allowed. Sometimes the concept is just flawed. Let me give you a very elaborate example of a flawed concept, and keeping with our sci-fi theme, you know the first Star Trek movie, Star Trek the Motion Picture? It's a total mess of the film, and I genuinely think it's terrible. Part of the reason for these issues is that the producer Gene Roddenberry was working on a follow-up TV series, which was called Star Trek Phase 2. But the success of Star Wars led the studio to demand a movie instead. So Gene decided that the movie was going to be based off the pilot episode he had outlined for Phase 2, In Thy Image. But this is the problem. He wanted to turn a story which was essentially a 40-minute episode into a 2-hour movie. You You just can't do that. Those are two different things. It was the wrong concept to use for a movie. If you ever watch that movie, it's about 3 times longer than the story needed to be. And it gets worse too, because behind the scenes, they had so many different writers come in to work on the project, struggling with rewrites for months. In fact, the script wasn't even finished when they started filming. They officially finished the script 4 months in to a 6-month movie shoot. And only 20 pages of the original 150 pages remained. So despite so much effort, it just didn't matter how much they worked on it, they couldn't make the concept any more than what it was. And all that to say, I think that's what the issue is here. Paolini clearly wanted to write a book that was sharp, clever, and scientifically accurate, but all of that is at odds with the simple concept of Iron Man versus E.T. equals explosions. The concept is just so simplistic. Sometimes you can make a simple concept work by just giving it more details, more world building, more realism. Avatar does this, and they had the budget to do it. But there's another solution to it as well. In my opinion, if you want a simple concept to go deeper, you need to give the story a contrasting tone. Let it be serious at some times and playful at other times. Think of Thor Ragnarok or Stargate SG-1. Those stories are sometimes quite silly and then sometimes very serious. And it works because the contrasting tone is well balanced. Instead, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars is a little bit more like that movie Cowboys and Aliens. An inherently goofy concept that was played as serious as a heart attack. But that movie failed because, try as you like, no one was ever gonna take that concept seriously. Some stories should not be 100% serious because the concept is just a little bit too silly. Stories like that need to have a little self-awareness, a little tongue-in-cheek, and allow itself to be funny at times. And before someone gets mad at me in the comments, I just want to acknowledge that yes, this book had humor in it, but humor is very different to having a playful tone, and I think it needed that to balance this book and to make the concept work. And there's one other issue. This one has been criticized a lot by other reviewers, so I'm going to be brief. Because you can just be brief.
I wasn't aware that was something a person could do.
This book is incredibly long at 900 pages, and I'm just not sure if there was enough story to justify it. I honestly think this book needed to lose a couple hundred pages, and normally I am the last person to suggest this. I like long stories. I think it's fine to build things up slowly and subtly foreshadow and then go deeper with characters. All of those things are fine. And that's what this book mostly does. It gives us so much character writing, so much scientifically accurate space travel, all good things. But again, for such a simple concept of fighting aliens, it needed to pack more of a punch. This book is not Malazan levels of complexity, so it didn't need Malazan's length. Still, those are the big 2 issues that I had with this book. As you can see, it's not the end of the world. Those aren't really deal breakers. So as I said at the start, this book did not deserve the extreme reactions. It's pretty good, couple of flaws, nothing too serious. I still really enjoyed this book and literally cannot wait for the next one. Although speaking of the next one, let's move on to the prequel novel. Okay, this is such a delightfully strange novel. It's set 23 years earlier, and it's about the very first contact with alien civilizations. This is the event that inspires Kira later in life to study and travel through space in search of aliens. That said, it has almost no connection to the first book, and is significantly different. Instead of 900 pages, it's 300 pages. So you can read these 2 books in any order because they don't really overlap, and they're also so different from each other that reading one won't give you a sense of what the other is like. Now, the story takes place in the early days of Earth space travel, where a team of explorers finds something unexplainable on the planet below them. It's a 50-kilometer wide hole in the ground, too perfect to be naturally occurring, and a strange repeating noise is coming from deep within. Who built it, and why? However, the site is completely impassable due to harsh conditions on the planet. It must be approached on foot. So 4 brave souls volunteer for the expedition across an alien world to find the secret of a great hole in the ground and the strange noise within. But here's where things get interesting. All 4 of our characters carry something with them, a secret from their past, the ghosts of loved ones lost, the demons of war and horror. As their journey gets harder and weirder, their own darkness within them begins to come out, 'cause sometimes the real danger is the friends we made along the way. So this book moves away from the sweeping epics of Paolini's other works. Instead, this is a tightly focused novel, honed to a fine point, and it's fascinating to see him compress his storytelling into a smaller form. Gone are the long descriptions or complex plots. This is a one single plot with a slow build. This is also the tensest story I've read in a while. 4 characters, all with their unique personalities and backstories, all beginning to slowly grate on each other little by little. We watch as the small seeds of conflict grow into something larger, and we wonder how bad things are going to get before the end. Their journey through strange alien places is almost a backstory to their interpersonal conflict. I was so engaged with what was going on with them. In many ways, I think this short book might actually be the best thing Paolini's ever written, especially from a character perspective. So imagine my surprise when I realized that this book has the lowest ratings of all of his works. Why does it have such low ratings? Well, you see, this book came under fire for one very specific reason. So this cover is partially AI generated, and Christopher Paolini did not know this. When this cover was announced back in 2022, fans began to spot the signs of AI design and flagged it with Paolini. He had to reach out to his publisher Tor Books to ask, what the hell? It turns out Tor Books had purchased that picture off a secondary website and then incorporated that into their original design. They had not been aware that the picture that they had bought was AI generated. This is a common problem for artists, where people who sell pictures online aren't flagging it correctly as being AI generated. While I think most people would have been very understanding of what was an honest mistake, Tor Books did not take it very seriously, and that's the real issue here. They didn't care until fans started to review bomb the crap out of this book. It currently has thousands of 1-star ratings, all because of the AI cover. Since then, the publisher made an official statement here, and then re-released it a full 2 years later with this cover. But many consider it too little too late, especially considering that their statement on the matter was very much not an apology. But since we're here, let's talk about AI for a second, because it's literally a big part of the Fractalverse with ship minds. Most of us are aware by now that AI programs are trained by stealing someone else's work and feeding it into the machine. Companies are not asking permission to use other people's work, and in turn, creating something that makes those people obsolete. And even aside from the morally reprehensible act of stealing, there is a bigger threat at work. You see, all of consumerism and business requires 3 players to function. First, the creator. So this is the artist, or the worker, or the laborer, the one who creates and builds the product. Second, we have the businesses, the middleman whose job is to take the product and get it into the hands of 3, the consumer. This is the one who pays for the product. All 3 of these players serve an essential part of business. But what we're seeing more and more of these days in late-stage capitalism is businesses perverting their cause and holding all the power. They underpay the creator and overcharge the consumer, keeping all the money for themselves. They rig the game, they hold all the cards. Now, we should remember that businesses fulfill a crucial role. A creator cannot simply make up something and then have the product sell itself, Field of Dreams style.
People will come.
You need to market your work. This is especially true for indie authors who forget this part of the process. Someone has to do this job of getting the product into the hands of the consumer. But businesses have corrupted their calling and failed in this purpose. This is where AI comes in, because it's never the artist or the consumer who owns the AI. It's always the businesses who profit from it. AI only increases their already existing power to control and cheat everyone else. This is why it's important not to use AI products. This is how consumers and creators can take their power back and start being treated fairly again, by refusing to engage. Now, should we review bomb a book? Maybe not, because it's Christopher Paolini who was affected most by that. But we definitely should resist every chance we get.
This is a rebellion, isn't it? I rebel.
So refuse to participate, reject what they offer, and prove that businesses do not hold all the power. Well, that was a fun little tangent. Let's return to the world of Fractalverse and discuss the future of this series. Now, besides these two books, this series actually has a fun little side quest called Unity, online interactive story. This is so unique because Unity is a story on Fractalverse.com written in second person mode where you are the main character and you interact and choose what happens. It's literally one of those old choose your own adventure stories that were hugely popular in the 90s when I was growing up. I read a bunch of these as a kid and I haven't seen them in decades since. Now, I haven't read through every single option of Unity, so I'm not quite sure how the story changes depending on your choices, but it was a load of fun. Basically, you arrive on a space station filled with humans and aliens coexisting, but you have to help solve a murder to keep the peace. You are presented with a scenario and then you have to click which option to choose below. And that story is entirely free to try. But I know what you're asking, what about a sequel? How many books will be in this series? Well, unfortunately, we don't know much. Paolini's been very secretive about this. He keeps his current projects very private, much like he did with Murtag, where he only announced the book's existence once he was absolutely certain that it was coming. And this makes sense, there's a good reason for it. You see, at the back of Sea of Stars, in an acknowledgement sections, Christopher Paolini openly admitted how bloody difficult this book was to write, and it took him years longer than expected. Even then, he says clearly that the book was the best he could do, and he just had to publish it as is, rather than to continue to work on it indefinitely. This is invaluable honesty, and I wish more authors were this transparent, but the point is, Paolini knows that books can sometimes take longer than expected, so he holds off sharing information until he's absolutely certain. So despite lots of searching online, I couldn't find any more information about how many books will be in the series or when the next one's coming. If you know anything, please tell me below, otherwise we'll simply have to wait and see. So much like Eragon, these books are super duper diverse. I've said it many times about Paolini, but this guy clearly has such a strong, healthy respect for women, and it shows in all of his writing. He writes women who are strong and competent, but also flawed and never unrealistically perfect. I think it's one of the reasons why Eragon has such a large reader base among women, even though it's usually seen as a teenage boy fantasy. Women are everywhere, and they're allowed to be human. There's heaps of racial diversity too. Again, with Eragon, the diversity was among fantasy races, but now there's real-world peoples depicted. There's a special emphasis on Asian cultures and Latin America. Kieran herself is Latina. There's a little bit of LGBT rep in here with a reference to a same-sex couple and their long-term relationship. However, there is a little bit of awkwardness we need to discuss about representing gender, because the aliens do not have gender. So we might call them non-binary. But when the humans in the story explain the concept of gender to aliens, it's in binary terms, exclusively male and female. Which, if there was ever a time to acknowledge the existence of non-binary people, it would be while talking to non-binary aliens. The big thing that makes me cringe a lot is that the aliens have no gender, so they use the pronoun it. And this is an important distinction, because if you use the pronoun it is for objects and things, not living beings. We don't use the pronoun it for people because it's dehumanizing. And trans people already face a lot of dehumanization in this world today. So that's why representation in stories is so important, to treat all people like human beings. So while I think the pronoun it is used in this book with a sort of scientific detachment and objectivity, I still still found it to be very uncomfortable to hear it over and over again. As for content warning, this series is definitely an adult series, whereas Eragon is young adult, and yet the content warning isn't that much more intense. There's lots of sci-fi action, a few scary scenes with a slight bit of horror, nothing too extreme. There's a few allusions to sex scenes, but they always fade to black, you don't see anything explicit. The big difference to Eragon is that here there are a few more mature themes, discussions around grief, mental health, plus commentary on society and humanity as a whole. Again, nothing too extreme. Is the ending worth it? Well, this is an important question for a 900-page book. Yes, I think the ending was worth the effort of reading that much. It was a suitably epic showdown and worth the slow build, in my opinion. It's also quite a conclusive ending. There's only a hint of where it may go next. So while I do think the book was a little long overall, I really can't fault how it all came together. And how much should you try? Well, this one's actually pretty tough, because there are two books, but again, one does not accurately reflect on the other. My recommendation would be to start with Sea of Stars. If you read the first 300 odd pages and you're not into it, then I think you've had a fair sampling. But overall, I still really enjoyed both of these two books, even though I think there's room for improvement. It was a joy to see how much Paolini has grown as an author, and I cannot wait to read what he does next. But now hopefully you know enough to try these books for yourself, so good luck and happy reading. Thanks for watching. Now, coming up next is the Children of Time trilogy by Adrian Tchaikovsky, followed by The Sun Eater, which everyone has been requesting for over a year now. I got comments all the time about that series. We're finally doing it. And then the Foundation series, the big one by Isaac Asimov. We are going to dive into some great sci-fi over the coming weeks, so I hope you'll join me for all of those. If you appreciate my work, I would appreciate your support. You can write a comment for the algorithm and tell me your thoughts on Paolini and all things sci-fi below. Remember that there are 3 ways to support me: buy something on my shop, support me on Patreon, or buy one of my books. All 3 of those things will help keep the lights on around here. I love you guys, I really do. Thank you so much for sharing your love of reading with me, and I'll see you again soon for another book discussion. Bye!